How you doing? I'm not so sure what I should say. It's very humbling to have the experience to stand here and talk to you. Like you, in our own small way, we're trying to work towards a fairer world. We'd like to see a fair society organised in a fair manner in every country in the world, not just our own, not just in Europe, but everywhere. And we challenge it every opportunity that we get. It's not easy to challenge the money and the power and the status quo, and it's gone on a long time, but it's always worth challenging. As you know, we're in the European Union, we're members for Ireland, and I don't know how much you see what we do, but we are fairly well outnumbered most of the time in what we have to say or do. And people are a bit confused about what the European Union actually is. And I know there's so much talk for many years here now about whether you join or whether you don't. But I think there's a lot of confusion as to what the European Union really is. The European Economic Community was formed in 1957. And it was formed as an economic union. And it was also formed with the horrors of the Second World War still very alive in their memory. But they also, from the word go, they saw themselves as being a bit more civilized than everybody else. And they talked about the notion of European values. Now, what are European values? They say they took them from the inspiration of the Enlightenment period, which was long before the Second World War. But they forgot to tell you that the Enlightenment ideas were actually used to justify colonialism and slavery, practiced morning, noon, and night for many, many years by the same Europeans. And you wonder sometimes how much things have changed. When the European Economic Community was formed, we were optimistic that this was going to be good for Europe. It would stop the Europeans from fighting with each other. But it wasn't quite as simple as that. Before the EEC was formed in 1957, NATO was formed in 1949 by the Americans. And the Americans formed NATO not as an alliance, but as a way of dictating to the Europeans to make sure that none of them ever went off to war without their permission. And they have been very keen to keep Europe subservient to US empire every day since. And they've been fairly successful, particularly of late. But as bad as the European Union was it been in the early days, and there was merit in some of the behavior of the EEC. But in 1985, we had a sea change. We had the so-called Single European Act passed. It meant deregulation, it meant privatization, it meant diminishing subsidies in order to facilitate global economies and multinationals at the expense of small local industry. It meant undermining the social welfare state, which the European Union had boasted about being one of its principles. That was 1985. That was the beginning of neoliberalism, as we know it today. Neoliberalism, and a lot of people in Western Europe don't like you using the word, because as Noam Chomsky described it, is capitalism with the gloves off. It's where the interests of the elites are prioritized over the interests of the ordinary people. And we're sucking that up many years now. It has led to a rising inequality across the EU. An EU that talked about, it was all about peace. It wasn't about power. Well, that's changed too. And we've enshrined it in the treaties. We haven't just enshrined neoliberalism. We have enshrined the militarization of Europe. Europe has been more... Europe has been militarized more and more every single day, and more of European Union taxpayers' money is being used to fatten the military-industrial complex. We're now talking about a military union, not just an economic union. And I seen a letter from your Foreign Affairs Ministry last September, I think it was. And your Foreign Affairs Ministry were saying, they were bending over backwards and they were telling the EU how good they were going to be. And they said that, we want to build a Macedonia based on the values of Europe. Well, now do yous? They said that we will support the sanction measures introduced by the EU. Oh, will yous? Because most of them are illegal and they breach the UN Charter, which the UN Charter that they don't talk about much more in the European Union. They talk about the rules-based international order, which the Americans invented as something they could make up as they went along. Because the reason they don't talk about the UN Charter is because they breach it every fucking day. Your foreign ministry, you said that you're eager to go on EU missions, EU training missions, EU military missions in Africa. Oh, are yous now? What in God's name would yous be doing down in Africa with Macedonian people? I went to Mozambique last year with the Security and Defence Committee. We went down to see 2 EU training missions. Now you might say, what in God's name are we doing in Mozambique? If you don't know where it is, it borders South Africa. It's a long way down. What are we doing down there training Mozambique soldiers? Well, I'll fucking tell you what we're doing down there. We're training soldiers because there was a big gas find in Cabo Delgado in the north of Mozambique. The government invited in Total Energies from France to explore the prospect of excavating it, despite all the environmental advice about opening new gas fields. They found out that it was one of the biggest gas finds for years. Total Energies says, yeah, we'll do it. We'll excavate it on land, but not at sea yet because it's too expensive. And the government said, if you want to excavate on this land, you've got to clear it yourselves. They hired mercenaries, Total Energies from France, to move 2,000 small farmers off the land with guns. What happened then? This was the only Muslim area in the whole of Mozambique. And war started. They took up guns to protect their land. And Islamic fighters from neighboring countries came in to help them. And now there's another war. The war has escalated. And the EU is down there trying to clear that land so that Total Energies can make a fucking fortune at the expense of the people of Mozambique who are suffering from climate change. Now tell me, why should Macedonia be sending people down to Africa to fight the battles of the imperialists, to fight the battles of the elites? Why would you be doing that? Is that your future? Is that what you want? We have a big problem in Europe. We talk about ourselves as being the peace project. But the mask has come off. Russia invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022 last year. It was an illegal invasion because it breached the UN Charter, and we condemned it because it was illegal. But the European Union did nothing to stop it from starting it. We had Stoltenberg, the head of NATO, come before our committee at Foreign Affairs and Security and Defence and boast about the fact that they provoked Russia into doing it. But yet, the EU didn't want the war to stop because US and NATO wanted the war to happen. Almost 2 years later, there's over 200,000 working class Ukrainians been lives sacrificed for a stupid war that means nothing for Ukraine. It's an absolute disaster for the country. We have sacrificed the country for no good reason. The EU has spent already 122 billion making sure that war didn't stop. We are working for war, not working for peace. And just to give you a small statistic on it, from the word go, over 80% of the politicians of Europe wanted this war to happen. We had an amendment on the resolution on Ukraine. We were looking for peace. We were called Russian puppets because we wanted peace, just because we weren't wanting to fuel the war. Myself and Claire Daly put an amendment in to the Ukraine resolution in September last year and again in December. And our amendment called on the EU to maximise its potential to commence dialogue and diplomacy with a view to ending the war and bringing about peace. Do you know that over 80% of the MEPs voted against that? They voted for war. And yet, the surveys showed that over 80% of the people of Europe wanted peace. You have 80% of the politicians wanting war. You have over 80% of the people wanting peace rather than to continue to punish Russia. We introduced sanctions that are hurting the people of Europe and are not hurting Russia. We have had a 17% increase in food prices and 50% increase in energy prices because we wanted to help the Americans to destabilize Russia at no good gain for the people of Europe. So not once did we look for peace in Ukraine. Not fucking once in the last 2 years have we looked for peace in Ukraine. We didn't give a damn about the Ukrainians, and that's the truth. The same as we didn't give a damn about the hundreds of thousands that died in Afghanistan, the millions of citizens that died in Iraq, the 400,000 that died in Yemen, all wars that we supported, the war in Syria. We have been complicit in all these atrocities. And now we have Gaza. You're looking at it on your phones. 400,000 were killed in Yemen. 15.8 million were hungry, according to the UN 18 months ago. You didn't see it. You didn't see one video of it on your phones, or on your TV screens, or on your complicit mainstream media, which are part of the problem, not part of the solution. We are seeing now the masks are off. We are seeing the European Union with the Americans and the UK supporting a genocide. 7,000 children have been killed in Gaza. At this day, over 4,000 women have been killed. 22,000 civilians in total. And we're supporting it. Not once have we condemned Israel. Borrell was asked, what Hamas did on the 7th of October, was that a war crime? Absolutely, he said. And he was asked, and what Israel is doing in Gaza today, was that a war crime? I don't know, he says, I'm not a liar. No, he's not a liar. He's a fucking liar. They know that Israel is committing war crimes. They know that Israel is engaging in ethnic cleansing. They know that Israel is engaging in collective punishment. And what are they doing about it? They go to Israel, they went to Tel Aviv and told Israel, we stand with you unconditionally no matter what. Is that the European Union you want to join? Every country has challenges. And as Claire said before me, you're going to have challenges whether you're run outside of the EU or inside of it. All I say to you is, be careful what you wish for.